Mr. John Chayka, you ain't in Arizona anymore. Welcome to the big leagues, my friends, because John Chayka and Mats Sundin just got introduced to the media in Toronto, alongside of Keith Pelley, in what was one of the craziest press conferences we have seen in a long time. Now, I know you could say for Mats Sundin, this guy in particular, maybe he's getting a few flashbacks here and there. We all obviously understand that Mats Sundin was a Toronto Maple Leafs legend, but now he's meeting the media no longer as one of the best Leafs ever, but as an executive. And with the staff that he is a part of, they were greeted with some pretty harsh commentary that we are going to dive into today. But before we talk about this press conference, let's talk about what Frank Seravalli tweeted out earlier this morning. Sources: prior to Sunday, the NHL looked into a tampering concern raised as new Maple Leafs GM John Chayka began to hire his staff. The claim was unsubstantiated, but underlined the suspicion some counterparts have for Chayka as he resurfaces. Are you kidding me? It's been one day, and the guy's already getting looked at for tampering when he's hiring his staff? What a great start for new Maple Leafs GM John Chayka. Let's briefly head over onto Hockey247.com and read the article posted by Frank Seravalli. In the days prior to Sunday's expected announcement, at least one team raised a tampering concern with the NHL as incoming Leafs GM John Chayka began to fill out his staff. The team expressed concern to the NHL that employees under contract may have been contacted without proper permission. Sources said the NHL looked into the inquiry and found the claim to be unsubstantiated. The NHL informed Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment CEO Keith Pelley of the inquiry. The league was also then in contact with Pelley afterwards to let him know it had been satisfied with the information provided. A Maple Leaf spokesperson declined to comment when reached on Sunday, but acknowledged the interaction with the league. Now, that's a great way to start out your Toronto Maple Leafs GMing stint, right? Getting charged or looked at for tampering. With that said, there's some more from Frank Seravalli from earlier this afternoon. He tweeted out here that Craig Button summed up a lot of what I heard privately on the reaction to John Chayka and Mats Sundin heading the Leafs hockey ops. Confounding. Perplexed. No record of accomplishment. None. It feels like Sundin was a human shield earlier on Monday. Now, these kinds of words, they may be setting the tone for what we are going to witness, because the clip that's going around everywhere, it's this clip right here where Steve Simmons absolutely unloads on Keith Pelley in regards to the GM search. Take a look at Puck Empire. They posted a tweet with some of the quotes. Steve Simmons says he spoke to 20 people around the NHL. One out of those 20 supported the John Chayka hiring. The other 19 said it was a sham and called Chayka a con artist, a liar, a salesman. Steve Simmons then asks Keith Pelley multiple times what went into the hiring process for this guy. What did you see in John Chayka that was different than all the people calling him a sham, a con artist, a liar, a salesman? And Pelley just responds with that grin on his face. We did our due diligence. 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 He says that over and over again. And the funny part is, you can see Mats Sundin on the right there. He's like, oh, man, I'm dealing with this again, Toronto media. Ay, ay, ay. John Chayka, on the other hand, it's like, bro, we're not in Kansas anymore, buddy, or we're not in Arizona anymore, buddy. This is the Toronto Maple Leafs. The media is amped up to heck over here on this side of the continent. And then we have some reaction to everything else. John Gambadoro, who, of course, did stuff with the Arizona Coyotes. He is a longtime afternoon drive sports radio talk show host on Arizona Sports 98.7 FM Phoenix. He went out there and posted this. This is incredible. John Chayka was a total fraud here in the Arizona Coyotes organization. He cost the Coyotes first and second round picks for cheating. Quit on the team right before the bubble, stabbed Don Maloney in the back to get the gig here, and the way he treated Shane Doan was despicable, wanted him gone, would not even consider letting him play at least 1 year on the third line, was just jealous of the guy. John Chayka is a fake. His only connection to Ty Domi is him getting this job. And that is absolutely brutal from a guy who was on the inside looking at the Arizona situation from a, I'm just going to say, radio talk show perspective. Total fraud. Con artist, liar, salesman. These words are being tossed around like candy. I get that it's Toronto, and Toronto has some of the most interesting media in the league. I'm not going to say the most brutal, but I'm going to say the most interesting. But I don't think we've ever seen a hire go this south, this quickly, where you have so many people on the outside talking specifically about the integrity of the guy hired and putting it all under the spotlight. There are some replies over here. Do you think Ty Domi has this much pull in the organization that he can dictate who the GM is? Gambadoro says, I do. Him and Sundin. Isn't Doan currently a part of the organization in Toronto in some capacity? How didn't they ask him of his opinion on this move? His contract runs out at the end of June. I highly doubt he would want to work for this clown, and no, they did not ask him. And if Shane Doan ends up coming to Vancouver, then that would actually make a lot of sense then. He leaves Toronto. He doesn't want to stick around with the guy that pretty much stabbed him in the back in Arizona. And he starts anew with a brand new team. This is what Jen went out there and said on Twitter. Steve Simmons, the guy who asked the question about the con artist, the liar, the sham, one of the most embarrassing garbage human beings in hockey. Media privilege to these availabilities should be revoked yesterday. He is by far, and it's not close, the most toxic reporter in Toronto. Ask a question without being disrespectful for once. Now it's funny, because Adam Wild out of SDP goes out there and replies, what scares you more? The lack of politeness in how the question was asked, or the lack of answer that the Toronto Maple Leafs and Keith Pelley gave? I have my issues with Steve Simmons, but I know my answer here. Now, it's funny, because it ain't just Steve Simmons going out there and asking questions like this. The Toronto Maple Leafs subreddit has some pretty interesting info as well. Take a look at this. Chris Johnston asked a similar question in a slightly different way 2 questions later to Pelley. Basically asked why the issues and sanctions from Chayka's time in Arizona were not a red flag. And Pelley just kept saying due diligence over and over. It's almost like Johnston is a serious reporter who isn't afraid to ask tough questions, and Simmons is a joke who was there to get a reaction. Screw Simmons to the end of time, but given he's talking to Kelly and given it's about hiring Chayka, I don't mind the question that he asked. I don't think the question is bad, but he clearly got emotional when he didn't get the response he wanted and dove straight into classic Simmons unprofessionalism. So, obviously we understand there are different ways to ask a question, and there are different ways a question can be framed. Essentially getting asked the same thing twice by Steve Simmons in one very brutal and emotional way, and another way by Chris Johnston in a much more professional, upstanding way, only for Pelley to give the same response of due diligence. It's due diligence. We don't care what the other people are talking about if they think that our guy is a con artist or a sham. We did our due diligence, and that's what matters. Only to not actually give an example or explain their reasoning. It's really setting up to be one of the most interesting Toronto Maple Leafs stints of all time. And Austin Matthews, your name is going to be the most talked about one from here on out, because we do not know what the future holds in store for you, for William Nylander, for the rest of this team, and what Matt Sundin is going to be doing all in this situation here. I mean, the top comment is like, yeah, Matt Sundin is getting war flashbacks after that exchange. He was given a rude reminder. Part of the job means dealing with Steve Simmons again. So with that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the John Chayka con artist comments. I hope you enjoyed this Vidisha 99, and bye.